Hello and welcome to your weekly astrology forecast. I'm Laura Chung. Thank you so much for being here. This is such a big week, a big deal week, because this is the week that I think we're all going to remember in history as the calm before the storm. There's no turning back now. I think a lot of our realities are changing. I think a lot of people have woken up. I'm trying to be the observer more than just, entering the chat because I have been witnessing in the last month in January a lot of white bodied folks, white people on threads, specifically TikTok and Instagram, sort of having their moment, and I think it is because it is your turn. It is your turn to feel what it feels like to have state sanctioned violence, murder your people out in broad daylight on film, on video. And I think it's important. I think this is an important moment for white folks, especially. And I talk a lot about this when I talk about Neptune, because for me, whiteness is a Neptunian thing. Whiteness is an ideal. Whiteness is a concept that was made up to further the agenda of colonial projects vis-a-vis capitalism as well. And so the United States and other Western powers need people to believe in the supremacy of whiteness in order for them to further their capitalist agendas in the United States and abroad. And this isn't just about whiteness in terms of like white versus everyone else. Whiteness as a concept, as the veil, as the illusion, it is like what infiltrates all of our systems and structures. And it's all of our jobs, including people of the global majority, to denounce whiteness. And it's only the white people, specifically the white bodied people, who also benefit from the system, that they now have to denounce it. And with the unaliving of Renee Good, who happened to be 37, and Alex Peretti, also 37, and my astrologer friend and colleague Jonathan Louise Dent, which we just recorded a podcast like a couple of hours ago. He pointed out that Renee Good and Alex Peretti both have Saturn and Neptune, the Saturn and Neptune conjunction, because that was the last time it was conjunct in the sign of Capricorn. And so this recurrence transit right now with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces about to go into Aries is sort of that awakening, that veil being lifted, and the myth that whiteness can protect you, and that whiteness is something that can essentially, give you power. And that is why people of the global majority, they try to become white adjacent and start to embody these, getting closer and closer to whiteness in terms of their access to power and privilege, because we've all been tricked. We've all been sort of like, there's this illusion around that whiteness can protect us. And so it's the job of all of us, especially white folks, to awaken to the fact that whiteness actually will not protect you, and that it is indeed not about that. In reality, it's really about US imperialism protecting its financial interests and its imperial powers. I hope I said that in a succinct way, because this is work that I'm continuing to build upon. And it really started with my own Neptune square. It's a transit that we all go through in our midlife. And I was going through simultaneously my Pluto square and my Neptune square at the same time. And because my Pluto and my Neptune are in the later degrees of their sign, so I have Pluto at 26 degrees of Libra and I have Neptune at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So I was experiencing both of my squares at the same time. So you go through these squares around 40 to 43-ish. And then obviously, my own natal placements. I have a Sun square Neptune in my chart, and Neptune right now is on my IC, about to conjunct my Sun. So just a lot of like Neptunian activations within my own life in the last couple of years. And really, what I found of this transit was what is reality, and the grief and the mourning that I had to do in recognizing that we live in the imagination of a white colonial mind, which extracts everybody of their indigenous spirituality, their culture, their languages, their essence of being authentic. And this first started in Europe. We always, like, if you've been doing this work, we always say like white people were colonized first. And I learned about this from Milagros Phillips, who is a race healer. And I learned from her during 2020 that a lot of the reason why white people in the United States, they start to latch on to our cultures of the global majority, or they become, MAGA or, nationalists, is because they deeply, deeply crave culture and community. And so I wanted to share this quote actually from My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem. I highly recommend his work. I took his course, his somatic abolitionist course in 2020. And this just gave me one extra layer of the book that I read, which is The Body Keeps the Score, right? So Resmaa Menakem learned from that teacher, but also brings in racial trauma. And he divides this book into bodies of culture, bodies of the global majority, and white bodied people, and how our work is different, but we all have to do the work. And so I highly recommend this book because a lot of the things that he talks about in this book are relevant to today, especially since he does mention the first Trump presidency, because this was published in 2017, which is during Trump's first term, which is just like, it's just wild. But this chapter is called The Soul Nerve. And so I'm just going to read these couple of paragraphs. The soul nerve is not just where we experience our emotions, it's also where we feel a sense of belonging. This is why we can think of it as it's both a bodily organ and a communal one. More than almost anything else, each of us yearns to belong. Within each human body is this deep, raw, aching desire. Here is what makes white body supremacy so pervasive and so intractable. Beneath all the exclusion and constriction and trauma, white body supremacy offers the white body a sense of belonging. It provides a false sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, of being a part of something intrinsically valuable. A variety of organizations from the Ku Klux Klan to the NRA have capitalized on this, offering quasi-community, a manufactured history, respected elders, cohesive symbolism, rules of admonishment, and internally coherent through toxic worldview, and so on. But white body supremacy also reflexively triggers the historical trauma embedded in those bodies. African American bodies also feel a sense of belonging, of course. Ours, however, has its roots in necessity and an actual shared history. American police have their own sense of belonging too, sometimes called the Blue Brotherhood. But there are many other ways to belong and many other people and groups we can belong to. We can belong as friends, family, as intimate partners, as neighbors and countrymen, and as fellow human beings. We will not end white body supremacy or any form of human evil by trying to tear it into pieces. Instead, we can offer people better ways to belong and better things to belong to. Instead of belonging to a race, we can belong to a culture. Each of us can build our own capacity for genuine belonging. And I get a lot of inspiration for my thought processes now from threads, which I've found so enlightening, honestly. Again, because I've just been witnessing and observing white people, white-bodied people, sort of waking up to all of this, the fact that their own cultures and connection to their lands have been stripped by the colonizers of that time, and how now here in the United States, like what is white American culture? You know, a lot of white people, when I ask them like, where are you from? Where are your ancestors from? Like, they don't know. They don't, all they say is I'm mixed with a bunch of things. And I don't know what that's like, to be honest with you. I'm first generation. I know exactly where my ancestors are from. I literally can go visit thousands and thousands of years of my ancestors and the homes and the land and everywhere. Like, I can trace that back. And so I'm experiencing my own sense of like a different sort of grief and mourning, that I don't get to be in the land where, you know, I'm indigenous essentially. And I've literally been picked up, like uprooted and brought to this country for a reason, which I believe is for a reason. But there's a different sense of mourning there. But I know where I come from. I know who my ancestors are. And so I can't imagine what that's like for a lot of white folks. And just like reading the comments, and there was this one white lady specifically who has been doing the decolonization work, but she lacks this sense of feeling of belonging, which again is something that we all deeply crave. And I'm thinking the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries is this reforming, reimagining of what it means to belong to a place that's not our indigenous home. You know, none of us are indigenous to the United States, unless you're Mexican or you're an indigenous person of Turtle Island. If you're Hawaiian, if you're Puerto Rican, you know, none of us are indigenous to these lands. And so what does that mean when all of us are here now as a result of US imperialism? I mean, I think for white folks, they came here to escape British imperialism and other reasons, right? But like, we're all here now. So what does that, how Saturn and Neptune for me in Aries is like, what is that reimagining of like our systems and structures and what it means to be a human race and how we relate to each other? And honestly, I do think for a lot of white folks, it is that step of seeing very clearly that, again, it's whiteness is fake in terms of its ideology, because we are all human, but it is made real through the systems and the caste system of the United States. And so again, I'm going to repeat it, like Saturn and Neptune in Aries for me is, what does it mean for us to belong together, and how can each and every one of us be responsible to the deconstructing of and the denouncement of whiteness within all of us. Like, I had to do that work. I did that work. I'm continuing to do that work of the ways in which Asian people are also like white adjacent, right? I mean, phenotypically, we can never be white, but we're lighter skin, and we perpetuate the model minority myth over and over again. And there's a lot of anti-Blackness within the East Asian communities as well. So I constantly like have to speak up within my own family. You know, I constantly have to check racist people in my family, racist cousins and aunties and uncles and my own parents, you know. So it is that interpersonal relationship where you can step up, because people always ask me like, what should I be doing? And not everybody can be at the front lines of revolution. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to have to be white folks, because this is your fight and it's your turn, you know. But not everybody, again, even within white folks, can be at the front lines, because some people are women. I mean, some people are mothers, some people are disabled, some people like they're not equipped to do that sort of tactical training. So it is really like, again, the Aries energy of who are you at the core? Who are you? And what is your responsibility, Saturn? That's a very Saturnian keyword in how you show up in this moment. So I just wanted to say all that. I'm going to kind of be going like back and forth with like charts and like my own understanding of this moment. So within the weekly astrology. So sorry, my Mercury and Pisces might feel like multiple tabs open, but then like I want to synthesize all of this to help people understand like where we are in this moment. We cannot look away. We cannot disassociate. We have to be alert and aware and be rooted in our bodies, because what they're doing right now, using Neptune, using film, using video, is very intentional. It's intentional that they are showing and broadcasting the murder, the state sanctioned murder of a white woman and a white man, both young. They were lawful observers using their phones to document and record what the ICE agents were doing. That's a very Neptunian thing, right? And the last time Neptune was in Aries was during the Civil War, which is when like war photography became really popular. That was also, I think, the time when film, like the first iterations of film came about. So now in this Neptune and Aries era, I'm wondering how we use film, video, and our social media platforms, for example, to witness and to observe and to document these war crimes, essentially. And something that Jonathan also brought up was that it was during Neptune in Pisces when Instagram was created. Instagram was created in October of 2010, and it was also the time that TikTok was created. TikTok was created, I think, September of 2016. And it is interesting that as Neptune is in its anaretic degree, 29 degrees of Pisces, on January 22nd, which is part of the recap, TikTok was sold to 3 investors outside of China. So now one of the owners of TikTok essentially is Larry Ellison, who is a big fat Zionist. So I think the more these social media platforms are bought out by the technocrats, by the billionaires, we're going to see more censorship. We're going to see more AI and propaganda and how they try to distort images and film and try to co-opt the narrative to paint the story. So it's really important at this time to document things. It's important to tell the truth at this time. Because Aries is this archetype of, it's honestly like, it's not giving a fuck. It's not giving a fuck about what people think of you and what, it's the opposite sign. It's a sister sign of Libra, which is more like people pleasing and being neutral. Aries is like, no, we got to do this. The time is now. I really quickly wanted to show the birth chart of Minneapolis. And this was another thread that I sort of like put out there. I was like, are there any astrocartographers who can look at the chart of Minneapolis? Like, why Minneapolis, right? Because there have been so many of these, revolutionary moments happening. More recently was obviously with Renee Good and Alex Peretti, but George Floyd, and before that was Philando Castile, and there's so many more. This is the birthplace of Prince. And so Minneapolis seems to be this very important node, like this very important place in the United States cartography wise. And if you're interested in that, my teacher, Sam Reynolds, has a video about the astrocartography of Minneapolis. I'll try to remember to link it down below, but his YouTube channel is called Unlock Astrology, and he has a great video about that. And then there's a couple of charts for Minneapolis, but this is the one that I saw a few of my colleagues use. Kira Taborn, who is the Astrology, and also Camille Michelle Gray, who I collaborated with her on the Neptune episode. She also used this chart. So as you can see, there's no birth time for this chart, so please disregard the rising sign, but there's a stellium of planets in the sign of Pisces. And so Pisces sun, Neptune in Pisces. So this is the Neptune return of Minneapolis, Mercury in Pisces, and Mars in Pisces. And the moon is in Virgo. So Minneapolis was born on a full moon in Virgo. And the eclipse that's happening on March 3rd is going to hit Minneapolis's sun and moon exactly. Let me see if I can do the transit and show you. When I saw that, I was like, of course, because why not? So what does this mean? Something about Minneapolis's identity is changing at this time. Something is ending while simultaneously being rebirthed in a very big, massive way. Okay, so here is March 3rd. We have, okay, wait. Let me push this back so you could see the exact time. So the moon will be at, I think, 12 degrees of Virgo. So it's a lunar eclipse at 12 degrees of Virgo, which is a full moon. And as you can see here, we have the sun conjunct the natal sun of Minneapolis and the moon conjunct. So it's like exact. Okay. Oh my God. And then the Saturn and Neptune conjunction would have already happened. That happened on February 20th. So something about Minneapolis is like definitely changing. The identity of Minneapolis is changing at that time. And because Saturn and Neptune have already entered Aries on February 20th, maybe we could think about, by this time, has the National Guard been deployed? Has, martial law been declared at this time? Like, there's so many ways that this can go, but I mean, I'm recording this on January 25th. So this is the day before Neptune officially enters Aries, and just like seeing how this is all playing out, I definitely think some sort of border enforcement, like with Saturn and Aries, is going to happen here. I think collectively, people of the global majority are like waiting for I guess, this bigger resistance movement to happen in Minneapolis, specifically led by white folks. Cause it's like, how do I say this? And I think that's why it's important to have a global perspective when you're talking about moments like this, because this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. ICE has been around since 2003. It was established March of 2003, the same month and the same year that the US invaded Iraq. And so ICE, IOF, and NYPD and all the police departments are all part of an entity that is to protect the interests of the empire. And so when the US, it's called the imperial boomerang, when the US goes in a foreign land to steal resources and enact its colonial occupation, it's called the imperial boomerang because that comes back here to keep the people here in order and in line. And so Renee Good and Alex Peretti just happen to be white people protecting their neighborhood. It's very Uranus and Gemini. It's like protecting the neighborhood and being the bad white people. And so I think it's by design that they showed them being murdered on camera, because the state wants white people to see, like, you shouldn't fall in line. You should just be quiet. You should just stay at home. Let us do our thing. Let us keep going abroad and stealing from Black and brown people, the global South. Let us continue to, deport the Black and brown people who, by the way, I mean, the US just invaded Venezuela and captured Maduro, their president, and they're not even hiding the fact that they went in there for their oil. Like, I think because we're at the 250th year of the United States and empire is dying and it's in the death rattle, right? The extinction bursts at this point. There's no time for them to start, pretending that they're the good guys anymore. They're really showing their just evil, demonic agenda. So that is, I think, the work that, again, white folks are, it's your time. It's your time. It's your awakening. And I just wanted to show this too, because a lot of people aren't really connecting the dots. They're seeing these ice raids and them attacking Minneapolis as this like isolated event. But again, a lot of things had to have become in motion. And this is why I was crashing out for 3 years when I've been advocating for Palestine, and how people in Palestine have been warning us for 80 years that this is coming to us. And literally that boomerang was not that, it was very quick, right? So at the top of this, so this is created by Dr. Rupi Mara. She wrote a book called Inflamed. Rupa Mara. She wrote a book called Inflamed, and it's about how inflammation, she's a doctor, so how colonialism, supremacy, and capitalism all keeps our bodies inflamed. So I thought this diagram was so like succinct and important graphically of how this is all interconnected. So at the top we have colonialism, which then goes to supremacism, and then from supremacism, white supremacy, and then it kind of goes to slavery, genocide, and then it like the arrows go to cheap labor, resource grab, under capitalism. And so do you see how all of this is interconnected? And so the supremacism is sort of Neptune, right? It's about this belief that white people are superior. And then even beneath supremacism is human supremacy and male supremacy, aka the patriarchy. And how all of these things sort of feed into, oh, we have the right, the God-given right to genocide the indigenous people of Turtle Island. And by the way, I hear a lot of people calling this like Nazi era, but that kind of erases the whole history of the United States, because it was actually the Nazis who studied Jim Crow and how first slavery was legal, Jim Crow laws were legal, lynching was legal, and they studied how the United States was legally oppressing and murdering the black people and the indigenous people. And so to not connect those dots again is erasing a whole history and the accountability that's required to go forward. Because I think I did a presentation on Amanda Seal's podcast, and I was talking about Saturn and Neptune and how we're never going to be able to go forward in this new earth that we're all co-creating if we as a people, all of us, but more specifically white folks, the descendants of the people who enacted all of this harm and violence and genocide, if first, the rules of healing, like if you've ever done healing or you went to therapy or you've done any sort of like transmutation with a shaman. Okay, maybe not everybody has done that, but I've done that work. The first thing is to name the thing, to name it, to hold all parties accountable, your role in it, other people's role in it. And unless we do that as a country, I don't know how we'll ever start the process of repair in the forms of reparations and also land back. So all of this has to be named and recognized. And I was watching a video of these two mundane astrologers on YouTube. They happen to be white, and they, in the whole video of what they were saying, they not once said the word imperialism, colonialism, capitalism, fascism. And I could tell that they were nervous about the words that they use. And I don't know, like, YouTube is also owned by Google. There's a lot of censoring going on, and they probably didn't want to get demonetized and, their video being deplatformed. But I'm just out here like, if I'm true to who I am, I'm an Aries sun. and I'm like sharing all of this guidance and advice to all of you, and I don't walk the walk, then I'm a fraud. Like, I want to say the thing, I want to name the thing, even if like, I haven't even been able to monetize this platform yet. Inshallah one day, but I just want to name the thing so that we build more resilience around what we are really up against, so that we are prepared for what it's going to take. Like, just saying like, oh yeah, this country's changing and the powers that be are, and it's like, no, you have to actually name the thing. You have to actually name the perpetrator, the people who are oppressing us, the people who are murdering us on the streets, the people who are doing these things, so that we can all be on the same page and be so transparent about what's going on. So I just thought this visual is very important because, again, Neptune being supremacism in the form of white supremacy, patriarchy, is a Neptunian thing, and how colonialism, capitalism is all intertwined to this thing. And we need white bodied folks to wake up to the fact that their whiteness is not going to protect them, and that the and unfortunately that's what it takes. It's so unfortunate that like it took the genocide happening in Gaza in 2023, like the ongoing genocide, and like seeing it on my phone. So that's very Neptune, right? That is what literally shattered everything for me. Because when I saw that and I saw Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and the Democrats do nothing, that's when I left the Democratic Party. That's when I fully radicalized. And then that is also what connected me to what the US did to Korea and my own motherland, and how everything is interconnected. And so, like, Palestinians are my people too, because first of all, we're all Asian. Palestine is in West Asia. And they're just my people because we're all people, we're all human. And I think people forget that. It's like, it shouldn't have to take this affecting you and your own people. And if you're Asian of the diaspora, or you're East Asian, or you're Korean even, this is why I'm like the hardest on Korean people, because it's like, our ancestors are rolling in their grave for you being silent and complicit. Like, come on. So that's okay. So the recap, I really did go over most of the recap in my little like intro blurb, but we're in Aquarius season. This is where the sun has its detriment or exile, and it's still a season ruled by Saturn, which is about contraction, right? And it's a slow moving planet, and Saturn is about discipline, structure, planning, adulting. It's also reality. It's being like a sobering reality of like what's really going on. It's a fixed air sign. So there's a little bit of detachment. And I think it is interesting that ice is sort of an Aquarius coded thing. So I noticed last week with all of the personal planets connecting with Pluto. So Venus made a connection with Pluto, the Sun made a connection with Pluto, Mercury made a connection with Pluto, and Venus and Mercury are all combust. They're being burned up by the Sun. There were a lot of dramas happening. So we had the Beckham family feud with, I think, the oldest son, who's Brooklyn, sort of leaving the family and saying that the mother was being inappropriate at his wedding, and then other people accusing Brooklyn of allowing his wife to take control. And control is the main theme that I heard and saw amongst all of these stories. So Karamo and the Queer Eye cast, Karamo said that he wasn't going to do any press tours with the Queer Eye cast because of their control over him, and he needed to protect his mental health. And then Blake Lively and Taylor Swift text messages were coming out. And so Venus again connecting with Pluto, this like rivalry now between these two former best friends, and all of the like the hidden underground things coming out, which is very Plutonian, right? And obviously with the connection to Mercury, which is like text messages and and communication. So I thought that was interesting. So think back to last week when you had those connections with Pluto going on in your own personal life. Like what was going on for you? Like, did you find out something that was like hidden from you? Did you have a fight with a friend, or did you have some weird like disclosure event with a friend or something, or a family member? And I found really like loud last week as the personal planets were connecting with Pluto. On January 21st, Liam Ramos, a 5-year-old boy, was used as bait to get his mother to come outside and ultimately kidnapped by ICE agents. And yeah, I mean, they're coming for the children. They've already come for the immigrants, and now they're kidnapping a 5-year-old kid. 5-year-old children. And I'm sure there's more stories. These are just the ones that we are hearing about. And on January 22nd, TikTok officially is owned by a US TikTok app. So the US users will have its own app, and it will be controlled by a new joint venture, 50% of which will be owned by a consortium of investors composed of tech company Oracle, which is owned by Larry Ellison, private equity firm Silver Lake, and Emirati-backed investment firm MGX. And what's interesting is that this happened the day before the Sun-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius. And we're going to have Sun Pluto conjunctions every year for the next 20 years. But last year, the first time they came together was when it was the day before, I believe, Trump's inauguration. And we just saw the leadership of the next like era of leadership, where the technocrats, there was Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk, and the sun represents leadership and power, and Pluto also represents power, but it's about like what's hidden underground. It was so interesting that these billionaires have always owned our government, but now they were like out and about, like you could visibly see all of them. And then I think it was that day or the day before TikTok went through its blackout, remember? And they sort of like changed the algorithm. So I thought it was an interesting connection to that timeline, with now TikTok has its own US based app. January 23rd was the biggest general strike in Minneapolis history. And that was interesting because not only was the Sun-Pluto conjunction the day before, but then Mars entered Aquarius on this day. So Mars is the planet of action, and Aquarius is about the collective, right? It's about doing something, fighting back. What is it called? Is like there's like no leader per se, horizontal power structures. There was this amazing thread by an activist on the ground. I posted it to my Instagram. Let me see if I could read it. My Aquarius dump. So Margaret Killjoy was on the ground in Minneapolis, and Margaret wrote, "It's genuinely a leaderless or leaderful movement, decentralized in a way that the state is absolutely unequipped to handle. There are a few basic skills involved, and so people teach each other those skills, and people are collectively refining them." Like, I was like, that's so Aquarius. The next day, January 24th, is when ICE murdered Alex Peretti, also 37, like Renee Good. And I mentioned the Saturn-Neptune reoccurrence. Again, I don't think it's an accident that the day before, there was the largest general strike in Minneapolis history. And then they shot and murdered Alex Peretti, a white man. He was an ICU nurse. I think he was an ICU nurse at a veterans hospital, and he was shown on video protecting women from ICE agents, and he was filming, again, Neptune, filming the whole thing. And they were like 8 ICE agents that came and ganged up on him. He was already on the ground when they shot him. And I think they made an example out of him. I think they were like, no, you're not going to strike, because what's really going to cripple ICE, this empire, is crippling the economy. It's to stop buying from these corporations, is to strike, remove your labor, essentially. So rest in power and peace to Alex Peretti, Renee Good, to Keith Porter, to all of the victims and martyrs of US imperialism. That includes Palestine, that includes all of our ancestors that came before. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because the whole reason why my parents immigrated to the United States is because of the US occupation of my motherland. So that's the recap. And right away, Monday, January 26th, is Neptune entering Aries. And I already talked about in the beginning of what I feel like this is sort of the illusion of whiteness being unveiled, and how all of us, white people of the Black, Indigenous people of the global majority, we're all sort of interrogating what this means and how we're denouncing it. And it just so happens that it's white people's turn. Like, they are murdering your people. So what does that mean for white-bodied folks who are seeing this for the first time, and they don't feel a sense of safety and security because if they have to denounce white culture, then what is the culture? That's why I read this excerpt from Resmaa Menakem's book. We have to reimagine what that means for all of us, because we are all we're all part of the human race. And I think the protection that a lot of people of the global majority, or like the resistance to have white folks in our spaces, in our movements, is because they haven't done the work, is because they continue to extract and try to co-opt and try to steal and try to center themselves. And I'm saying, like, it's the onus is on white folks to now do that work and be a part of the solution, be the good ancestors that your ancestors have also been praying for your bloodline. And I think Neptune, it is the planet of dreaming, film, illusions, right? And creativity, spirituality, music, art. I do believe the power of art and the artist is going to be at the forefront of our revolution, of our liberation. It's so necessary. And Aries, again, it's ruled by Mars, so it's very quick. And Aries is the self and self-sovereignty and self-determination and being authentic. I think a lot of people relate authenticity to like Leo and Aquarius, which I don't deny that. But I also think Aries are very, very self-determined in their authenticity, and they're unapologetic about it. Neptune also has significations, obviously, to like the ocean. And I always relate Neptune to aliens, and what's hidden. So we might see more ET, alien, UFO activity. I think they're already here. I believe they're already here. So we shall see. And I feel like it was last year. I mean, they always do this. They always have like disclosures. And basically it was last year when the US government was basically like, yeah, aliens are real. And like nobody cared because there was all these other things going on. There were those Gen Z led revolutions last summer when Neptune and Saturn were in Aries, and then Uranus entered Gemini, right? We had Nepal, Philippines. So we're going to see more of that. And again, Neptune is the ideal. It's like a myth. Every empire needs a myth and a lore. And for the United States, it has been about the supremacy of patriarchy and whiteness, and about, make America great again, about nationalism. So what happens to that myth and the lore and how it needs to change if we're going to continue to go forward, right? What does that mean? What does our culture mean when we're all coming from different places? Like, what is our shared ideal? What is our shared culture? And I mean, we're going to have to see, right? We're going to have to see how that forms. But I wouldn't say excited is the right word, but I do feel very hopeful that we're so conscious at this moment. We have technology to help spread the word. We have social media platforms to like educate people quicker. Like we don't have to have like a carrier pigeon to send our information, we can just like literally connect with each other on these social media webs, on the interwebs. So how can we all get on the same page and be the midwives of something coming up? What's interesting is if you think about like death and like nothing in nature, nothing in the world, the universe can be destroyed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So we do need the death doulas of empire to help and I think that's where the white folks come in. I think white folks are the death doulas of empire because I envision this as like they're getting the grave ready, right? They're making the grave site ready, and they are sort of dismantling that within themselves and within their own family and communities, and they're getting ready to bury the empire that their ancestors created. And then you have the midwives that will be in charge of birthing what's new. And so what Jonathan was talking about, which that episode is going to come out next month in February, is right after the Civil War and in the Emancipation Proclamation. And after that, it was like the United States was in this sort of like weird, chaotic, liminal space of like, okay, what are we like Reconstruction, right? Like, what are we gonna create next? And at that moment, they didn't integrate the Black people who were just formerly enslaved into any structures and systems in a meaningful way. They were just like, okay, you're emancipated, but then like didn't give them reparations. They didn't give them land. They didn't give, or, like they didn't make it in a way where they were like, we stole from you. We made you create this wealth in our country, but now you're free. Like, that's not like, and so what we're experiencing today is sort of the repercussions of that moment, that Reconstruction moment. And that, again, is the last time Neptune was in Aries. And so how can we make sure, because what happened next was the emergence and the birth of the KKK, which is still sort of this like energy of supremacy and Jim Crow laws. So how can we, in this next iteration of what's coming out, prevent that from coming and birthing? Because again, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It needs to be transmuted. And that is the work of all of us, to make sure that that energy of empire and supremacy within each and every one of us, that we take responsibility for that for ourselves, Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Okay, so there's so much more to say about Neptune and Aries, which you can watch my interview with Camille Michelle Gray, and then the upcoming episode with Jonathan, and sort of our framing around this moment. And I'm going to obviously keep talking about this transit because it's such a big deal. It's a 14-year transit. So Neptune will leave Aries in, I think, 2038 or 2039. And so you want to look at the Aries section of your chart. And Neptune is sort of getting you to reimagine this area. But you might be confused about it for a little while. I can tell you that with Neptune going through my fourth house of Pisces in the last, 14 years, that's when I really got into spirituality, connecting to my indigenous roots, connecting to my ancestors, becoming more sort of revolutionized because of my connection to my motherland and my roots, my foundation. This was the time I got into yoga and meditation and astrology, so think of, do some reflection of like the Neptune and Pisces era moving to Aries, because those are two definitely different energies, Pisces is the end of the zodiac, and then Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. Pisces was water, mutable water. So Neptune and Pisces sort of have affinity to each other. And then Aries is cardinal fire sign. It's about action and engagement. On January 27th, Mars in Aquarius will conjunct Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees. So we're going to have this transit, this conjunction every about 2 years. So the last time this happened was February, I think 13th of 2024. So you could think back to that timeline too. So this is like the next synodic cycle of Mars and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. And when these two planets meet each other, it could be aggressive, assertive. So Mars is the planet of action, of anger, defense, war, and conflict. And Pluto is the god of the underworld. So having Mars connect with Pluto, oftentimes in a mundane way in the global like political landscape, this could be like a Schmemerist attack, for example. I don't like saying these things, but I'm not even going to say I'm not fear mongering anymore because hello, take a look outside. But whenever these two are connected in some way, there's some attack or pew pew movement moment. So I would say be careful. I'm not saying like don't go outside, but I'm also saying like be aware of your surroundings, be careful. If you have Aquarius placements in and around 3 degrees, so like 0 to 6 degrees, I would just be really careful. Like don't rush into things. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. But this is also a great day to take action, call out your abuser. Again, I'm going to keep saying this same thing, like with all of these connections to Pluto, whistleblowing, striking, forming a union. What I've been watching in Minneapolis is so inspiring. Like degular people have literally come out. It's very Aquarian too, because it's like they're coming out in like below 20-degree weather to protect their neighbors. Like regular people are just taking shifts and protecting kids' schools and walking people home. And again, I've been seeing white people doing this. Like it's just so inspiring, which is why I'm not scared, because I'm like seeing it and believing that we will save us. Like no politician. This is why I always say like, I do believe it's important to have like an AOC and Zohran Mamdani and Barack Obama, but like they are still a part of the system. Like they're not the heroes and leaders that we think they are. Okay. So they're still in a system that is dying. Okay. So they're going to have to play the part. They're still both sizing. They're still neutral. So no politician, no one person is going to save us. That is like, Pluto and Aquarius is we're all going to have to be involved. And the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries of it all is like, okay, what is your role? Because you can only do what you came here to do. And it might be, you might think it's so insignificant, but everybody has something to contribute. Even being that annoying person in your family and calling out your racist uncle or father or brother is part of what you must do, okay? Because what I'm seeing with Saturn and Neptune and Aries too is there was these videos going around of these like very young men with masks on, carrying the American flag, carrying the cross of Jesus. I was like, oh my God, Jesus is Palestinian, but okay. And they're like part of this like nationalist group of like white nationalist group. And that to me is so, again, Saturn and Neptune and Aries. It's like they want to belong to something so badly that they're not even realizing what they're doing. Like it's whiteness and white supremacy harms white people too. It's like, anyway, and Saturn and Aries too, I think is going to bring in a lot of younger white men into these like nationalistic movements. So going back to Mars and Pluto, yeah, I think it's a great day. Again, I would say be careful because this is explosive energy. This is like And also with Mars and Pluto, it's like maybe you do decide to like take action in something, and then that one action exposes this like entire network of corruption. I just started watching The Rip on Netflix. I haven't finished it yet, but it's giving that kind of energy. It's like you peel back one layer of the onion and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my God, the entire system is rotten." On January 29th, Mercury in Aquarius will conjunct Venus in Aquarius at 14 degrees. And I think this is really positive, to be honest with you. This is a great day to announce something, especially if it has something to do with Mercurial or Venusian things. So Mercury rules three things: commerce, communication, and contracts. So when it's connected to Venus, which is a benefic planet, Venus is also about relationships, values, union, worth. This is a great day to launch something that has to do with those sort of topics. This day you might feel inclined to, I know like a lot of these social media platforms are sort of like, I don't know what's going on with the algorithm, but actually on the Sun Pluto conjunction was last year when TikTok went black. I downloaded Reynold, and then this Sun Pluto conjunction, I downloaded Upscrolled, which is like the Palestinian owned version of TikTok. So I'm like tracking that that patterning of Sun Pluto for me personally, because you know, Aquarius is also like inventions because it's the jug, and it's also what humans decide to invent in order to benefit the collective. And you could and try not to put like a binary way of like good or bad, because again, that could show up as an app that controls people and surveillances people. But maybe Mercury and Venus coming together in Aquarius is maybe this will inspire people to create apps that are really for social good. Maybe people decide on Mercury and Venus Day to boycott. You know, what are the ways in which what are the ways that you're dismantling empire within yourself? Like Europe, are you, you know, conforming to beauty, Eurocentric beauty standards as a person of the global majority? Are you boycotting? Are you divesting from these systems? That's a good day to do Mercury and Venus kind of things. Because again, Mercury is commerce, and Venus is like value and worth, and also like our relationships. You know, I've been seeing a lot of videos going around about white women being like, I'm divorcing my MAGA husband and I'm not talking to my MAGA friends. Yes, because politics are embedded in our relationships, both in romantic and platonic. Like, I don't know how people don't realize this. Like, I realized this during the Bush administration, like George W., when, and that was like not even the same Republican Party as it is today, but I realized it back then. Okay. And then slowly but surely, like the Republican Party just became like batshit crazy bananas. And then, you know, the whole MAGA movement of 2017 is another like layer of like, wow, I cannot be friends with you if you believe immigrants should be deported, for example. Like our values are just not matching. So that's Venus. And then on February 1st, as if we didn't have anything else going on this week, there will be a full moon at 13 degrees of Leo, and this happens at 5:09 p.m. Eastern time. And I will share the chart because I got a comment last week that y'all like the charts. So full moon in Leo, here we go. Okay, so a full moon is when the moon is opposite the sun. This is called an opposition in astrology. So the sun is at 13 degrees of Aquarius and the moon is at 13 degrees of Leo. So this is a full moon. What I think is interesting is all of this Aquarius energy. So we have Pluto here at 3 degrees. We have Mars at 7 degrees. Then we have the sun at 13. Then we have Venus at 19. Then we have Mercury at 21. So that's 5 planets in Aquarius, all opposing that moon. Not exactly but like by sign for sure. So Leo is about the self as well. It's about shining. It's leadership, it's royalty, it is power, it is creative expression. Leo also is the archetype of fame and celebrity. The moon represents our instinct, our intuition, our body, and the opposite sister sign of Aquarius. So Aquarius, the sun being in its detriment, the ruler of this moon is the sun in Aquarius. So when the sun is in Aquarius or detriment, right, in its exile, so it's the furthest away from its domicile, this is like the sort of like, I always say Aquarius are such interesting aliens, right? They hate people, but they know that they are a part of a collective and a community. And so that's why they have to do their part. You know, it's a Saturn ruled sun, and it's a sun that can be sort of like detached. It's not like this lovey-dovey, fuzzy sort of person, but can relate to people sort of like on the mental plane. Like, can we relate to each other in an intellectual capacity? How can we connect the dots to make something better? You know, putting our brain power together and brainstorming so that we can invent and move forward. That's why also Aquarius is a future forward sign, a prophetic sign about innovation and futuristic things. So I do think this full moon in Leo is interesting because in the one hand, the Leo moon is like, who am I? Like, what are my creative expressions? What are my needs? Who am I at my core, at my essence? What is my authentic self trying to express in this moment of this collective moment of like, okay, if your only like gateway into this at this moment is these ice raids in Minneapolis or across the country, and you're witnessing all of this, right? And so you as like this person, you're like, I want to do something. What should I be doing? This is sort of like that full moon in Leo moment, with that opposition to Aquarius, which is like more of a collective sign. But then all the personal planets being in Aquarius, so you have Mars, the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. It is, I think, this realization that you have to be a part of a community. You have to start engaging with people. And it's not going to be comfortable, right? Because we all have egos. We all are coming from traumatic experiences and maybe even relationships that were traumatic, but really understanding what it means to be in a community and having different kinds of community. So you have your friends, right? Your intimate friends who you share your personal lives with. And maybe you have your activism friends who you do direct actions with. And you have your neighborhood, which maybe you don't even like your neighbors, but you have to build with them. And if you're lucky enough, some of those like overlap. But I think the moment is saying this full moon in Leo is like, okay, I have to release my individuality. I have to sometimes like release the need to only think about myself in this moment and think about the greater collective and how I play my role in this greater collective. And I have to start relating to other people. So Mercury in Aquarius is like, how do I communicate with people? Venus in Aquarius is like, okay, how can I start to decenter just romantic relationships? And because unfortunately, the way that the United States and all Western culture is set up, maybe not all Western culture, because I know there's some like Nordic countries, like I think, is it Norway or Denmark, that they don't even get married there? Please let me know if you know this for sure. But our culture here in the United States is so centered on the nuclear family, and like it centers romantic relationships because that also is what feeds capitalism, right? But if you live in a community, like most of the people, the global majority, like we live with our parents, we live with our grandparents, we live with our aunties and uncles and cousins, if you think about the way in which an intergenerational family and household works, we share the electric bill, we share cars, we share our resources, which is antithetical to capitalism. So this Leo moon again is like the individual and my needs and like what I need, right? Leo moons, when they're like at their worst, are sort of like, I need to be validated and you need to tell me how wonderful I am. And then at their best, they're sort of like, okay, I know who I am at my core and I'm going to live and move in my authenticity. And then in this full moon moment, it's like, okay, but what is my responsibility using my gifts, using my talents, maybe my fame as a resource, maybe the platform that I have in serving a bigger collective and the smaller collective that I'm a part of. So I think that is the full moon in Leo. It's not really making any other connections. Like again, the ruler of the full moon is the sun in Aquarius. We're about like 13 days out of Saturn moving into Aries. Neptune has also already entered Aries. So, yeah, it's interesting full moon. And then I think that's it. That's the weekly astrology forecast. So, thank you so much for listening and supporting my work. I'm so grateful. And I'm going to be going to the motherland. So the next forecast, I will be in Korea and I'll be there for a couple months. And I'm going to share more about what I'm doing there. And I'm going to take you on a journey with me. And just moving forward, I think I'm going to spend more time creating content on my Patreon because I think Amanda Seals is the one that told me that that's the only platform that's not owned by Zionists. And I'm not going to get rid of TikTok and Instagram, but I'm going to sort of play around with my relationship to it. Cause I know I ask people all the time, like, how did you find me? And they're like, TikTok or Instagram. I'm like, of course. So I'm going to start to like play around with these platforms. I just downloaded Upscrolled and I'm sort of like figuring that platform out. But if you want to support my work, the best way is through Patreon, which is the most affordable way too. But also YouTube. This is all free 99 that I create this content, but it's financed by my Patreon. So I have two, I guess, levels. Is that what it's called? Tiers. I have two tiers. The 555 group, they're the ones that fund this weekly forecast. And then the North Node tier, which is $10 a month. And every rising sign gets a monthly horoscope. And I'm going to add more content because I think it's important to honor for all of us, it's important to honor our own time and the reciprocity of that, but also to protect our content from these like demonic forces behind these apps. So anyway, that's really it from me. I will see you next week. Bye.